Hey guys, this is White Manga here with a tutorial on how to apply speed lines and focus lines into your manga or comic. First thing you guys want to do is get your pencil. I use a mechanical pencil. People like asking me what pencil I use. It doesn't really matter, I just use any mechanical pencil. And you want to have your focus point, and that point is basically the point where all the lines are pointing to. So when you're drawing focus lines, all the lines are all pointing to one direction, and you're drawing it like a stroke motion. You're not drawing the line like you're drawing the lines for, say, the panels. You're drawing lines like you're drawing the lines, and at the end of the line that's going towards the focus line, it kind of fades out. So you're kind of like stroking it that way. And then if you notice, I'm going, in this case, making sure the lines are behind my sound effects and are also behind the text bubbles or the text balloons, right? You don't want the sound effects to go in front of that, right? So we're stroking from the edge of the panel, or the edge of the panel towards the focus point, and it's kind of like fading. The line keeps fading the closer it gets to the focus point. Now you could have the lines all be the same length. It depends on what you want to do, but in this case here, the lines are all of different length, and the lines are all of different distances between each other. And I'm drawing these lines with a lot of space from between themselves, but I'll add more as time goes on. And that this weird circle-ish thing I'm doing is kind of like just that safe space that I want. I don't want any lines to cross those, right? I kind of, what I'm using the focus lines for in this drawing is just for you to focus on the character, right? So all the lines are pointing towards the character's head, and the character's name is Van Von, so it's pointing towards Van Von's head, and basically that's where I want your eyes to focus. It's almost like if you had cameras, right, and everything else, and something is in focus and everything else is blurry. That's kind of what we're using the focus lines here for. There are other uses of the focus line where you can do show movement and things like that, but here we're using it for camera tricks and things like that. So here we also have the lines in front of the camera, in front of the character, right? The lines are like overlapping with the characters, the drawing of the character and the building and everything. It's overlapping with everything in the panel except for the text bubbles and the sound effects. And it's usually for this case where you kind of just want them to focus on something within the art. But there are other instances where you would want the lines to also be behind the character the same way they're behind the text bubbles or the text balloons and the sound effects. Remember, the line is like a stroke motion. It's not a start and stop kind of thing. Now here I'm just going towards each of the lines, still making sure they're all pointing towards the focus line, and I'm just adding two more. It's almost like making each of them like segments, and they're all at least 3 lines, right, before they kind of spread out. Again, they're all different. The lines are all of different length, so feel free. Some lines might be much longer in length than the others, even the ones that are close to each other. And even then, I'm still adding more. And remember that space I had around the character's head where I want you to focus? I make sure none of the lines go beyond that. That's just like a guideline for me, basically. And I just do this with the pencil, and I just go to each of the lines, and I just add more lines to them, like at least like 3 or maybe, so like 2 more or 3 more to like each batch, each separate line. Again, remember the lines are of different length, and the distances between each other also, it doesn't have to be the same, but somewhat similar. And I just keep adding more lines until I have it right. Here in this scenario, I'm using a pencil first, but there's sometimes you can go in with ink first, but it's always preferred if you go with pencils first in case you make any mistakes. And with time, when I'm inking, I just ink with the Sakura microns. I don't ink speed lines or focus lines with a G pen. I use microns with that. It's so much faster, at least for me in my style. Again, these are kind of things where you also take into account what your style is. Maybe your speed lines or focus lines are not going to be done with a ruler. That's really up to you. Or if your comic's not even done in the panel, that's up to you. That's just an example of how I want the lines to be. One's a stroke, that's what we want. Then the other one's kind of like a start and stop. That's not what we're looking for in this scenario. We almost want to give a feeling that the line is fading away the closer it gets to the focus line. Now, there's several comics out there that kind of do this differently. Some comics will have the focus lines be much closer to it, like the lines be much closer to each other. Sometimes they're all close to each other, and there are no distances between. Let's say like the 1, 2, 3 will be close, then there'll be space, and I'll do 1, 2, 3. It's kind of like what we're doing here. But there's some comics that are just like equal distance. It has an equal distance within between all the lines, or the lines all have the same length, or just it all depends on what you want to do. There are comics where how do I put this? That the lines are so close to each other that it almost looks like the artist was shading. There are many ways to do this. I suggest my advice would be to read or study several mangas or comics out there, because this is done by both Western comics or Eastern comics done in Japan or comics done in the West. Mostly done in the East. This is mostly a shonen kind of style of a way of doing things. Western comics do it too, but they always have some edge to it that makes it different. It's all different all around, but shonen comics are more similar to each other than anything else. So my suggestion is to pick up several comics and study how they approach using speed lines and focus lines, and kind of find yourself and do what you feel is best for you or for your style or your comic and things like that. Again, you want to make sure it's all pointing to the focus lines. This is very similar to how you would approach, say, a vanishing point when you're doing perspective. Again, making sure my line's not passing that safe space. But yeah, and I'm not worried about the pencils because I can erase them. And once I get to this stage and I have lines exactly where I want them, I then go over it with ink. As you can see. Here, even though there are no pencils there, I'm just going to add more using the microns. Some lines are so short, some lines are longer than others. Like, you really have a lot of freedom. So okay, guys, what we just did was focus lines, right? Here we're gonna what we're actually doing here is speed lines. While I'm just gonna talk while I use the French curve to kind of give like a curved, dynamic background floor thing, because Sano, the character here, Sano's leg is kind of touching the floor, so I kind of want to draw some backgrounds for the floor, because that's what he's interacting with here. It's weird, but you see what I mean when you see the finished product. Anyways, what we just did was focus lines, right? Here we're gonna do speed lines, and the difference is just speed lines. Speed lines are the lines, really, right? But the difference in this particular version that I'm going to show you guys is that the focus point is not going to be in the panel. So it's kind of similar again to when you're drawing backgrounds and you have a vanishing point, but the vanishing point is not in the shot. That's kind of like what this is. Here the focus point is not in the image, and then most of the lines are going to seem parallel to each other. So it's up to you whether you want them to be completely parallel to each other or just close to it. Most of these are done when the character is like running and the camera is maybe running side by side with the character, or things of that nature. They're kind of like it almost looks like the lines aren't pointing to the same spot. They're kind of just layered and parallel to one another. So here, I'm just going to go in straight with the micron, and yeah, so we're gonna skip the phase of just using the pencils. So this is me showing you a different way. I already have some sketch lines already there, but those are just sketches. So here, the same thing. We're drawing lines that I'm trying to make sure they are somewhat parallel to each other. You know, since I'm kind of how I put it, winging it a bit, it's not going to be exact, but I'm going to make it seem as exact as possible. So I'm just going to add more lines, and similar to what we did before, I just keep some kind of distance between each of them, and I go behind the sound effects. And in this case, again, different to the first time, we're going behind the character in this case, because now the focus is, I want you to focus on the whole, like, this is not focus lines. I want you to see the whole drawing clearly. Like, I don't want to have the lines interfere with the character. So I want the speed lines behind everything, and it just adds to the whole vibe, the whole action scene as a whole. Because here we're also using it to show movement. So here it's almost like the camera is moving with Sano here, and it's going to be moving downwards, right? There are some cases where you can use the speed lines to show the direction that the camera is going to go, where it's about to stop. So in this case, it's almost like the camera was coming down and it's now slowing down. That's why the lines, they're like fading to the ground, but it's almost like the camera is coming from above. It's weird to explain because there's so many ways to go about this, because the lines just indicate where indicate motion, basically. And so they're like motion lines. You can call them motion lines, call them whatever you want to call them, but these are like lines used in a lot of action scenes and things of that nature. So it's similar to before. Here we're just having them parallel, and now I'm just adding one or two lines to each of them, and I'm just doing adding lines where I see fit. See, Santa here is about to hit the ground, and we're almost like trying to go with his like a quick motion and then a slow motion before he hits the ground. And that's why the speed lines there are lots of speed lines at the top and not so much at the bottom, right? It fades the closer it gets to the bottom. There are other ways to use speed lines to where you can have the character on the other end, like much further away from where the line fades to show that that's where the character is coming from. You can do this with focus lines, and you can do this with speed lines. And I'll give examples of what I'm talking about, because visually I'm sure some of you don't know what I'm talking about, or can't visualize what I'm saying. But when it comes to actually drawing the lines and applying, actually drawing the lines, I feel like this tutorial is sufficient. But when it comes to where they're applicable, I'll show examples in a second, and I'll talk a little more about that. Just remember that for these, it's all these lines, right? They're actually going to. It depends on how you want to do them. Again, they could all be parallel, but they could all be pointing to one, spot. It's just that spot is so far off. It's so far away from, it's so far away that it couldn't be in the shot. So they all look parallel when they really aren't, right? You can go that route, or you can actually have them all parallel. And I'm going to show examples of both. So what I'm doing here is just more of the same, except here we're just gonna be just a teensy bit more parallel. Well, I don't know. This is actually not parallel. This is more. It's just more of the same what we just did, but from a different angle. Again, they're gonna seem parallel, but they're really not, and that's all this is. And then I'll show you the final results of these, and I'll give examples of, more examples of what I'm talking about. Here in this case, this is less parallel than the previous one. Here, it's if you look at it, it's a whole lot. This panel is going to show, at least with the final piece, is going to show that it's a whole less parallel than the last, and it indicates that it's pointing to a focus point that's just not in the shot. And the focus point is actually what the character is shooting at, but clearly what he's shooting at is not in the panel, right? And then, that's the idea behind this. But yeah, for the most part, it's similar to what we just did with Sano about to hit the floor. And I actually made some more mistakes with this one, where the lines don't look like they're pointing towards the same spot all the time. So in post, like in Manga Studio, I had to change a few things here and there. But for the most part, I think it worked out fine. So here are more examples of when I use focus lines and speed lines, and where I use it, when I use it. And I'll have a separate video going into a whole lot more detail. But for now, these are just basic examples, more examples of what I'm doing. But if you take, the how-to of this video, you'll be able to recreate all of these examples. And that's all, folks. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and there is more to come. Please don't forget to like this video, leave a comment if you have any questions, subscribe to the channel for more, because there will be more me talking about ways for you to add that extra oomph to your comic, help you create your comic or manga. And I hope you guys enjoy what I have in store. Again, I'm the creator of Apple Black. If you want to know what Apple Black is, where you can read it free, the first 4 chapters free, or you can purchase Volume 1, the first 9 chapters. I'll leave links to everything in the comment section, in the About section below. And it's published and serialized on Saturday AM. Links to what Saturday AM is and how we operate and things like that, I'll leave links in the About section as well. This is White Manga, and I'm out.